So today, dynamic forms, and we're just going to sort of usual format we've had for these things. Try to keep it a bit dynamic and fun. So I'm just going to click this, and Harper can introduce himself and Myriad.
Yeah, not a sale at all, but yeah, some of you guys are returning, so thank you again for week 3. So I run Myriad with Ben. These sessions are really just to sort of give back to the community. We're not trying to sell them in any way, but we are Myriad Consulting. We've been knocking around for a long time. So I personally worked on sort of 50-odd implementations across the world. In the Midlands with 2 boys, and I'm a keen runner. So if any of you are on Strava, look out for me. So that's kind of a bit about me. I'm sure you don't want to hear about me. We're here for the dynamic forms. And next page.
Yeah. So we're going into the next page. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is slightly different format this time, in that we're actually going to use one of our e-learning modules. And
Ben, sorry, I forgot to mention, guys, sorry, my fault, I don't want to cut over Ben. If you've got any questions, or I'll moderate this, if you've got any questions, please put them in the questions box, the chat box at the bottom, and I'll try my best to answer questions as they come along. Or if not, I'll store the questions together and ask Ben when it's a convenient time to do so. Yeah. So yeah, please use the chat box.
Yeah. So dynamic forms, what are they? If we think about the evolution of these things, basically there's flexi fields, and we're all using flexi fields, and forms developed out of flexi fields. They've been around for a while, and there's been a promise of making them dynamic. By dynamic, what we mean is the ability to pull information out of Business World into the forms, and then actually posting information from the forms back into Business World. So what we're going to show you today is some forms and some ideas about how that might work. So this is obviously using dynamic forms, and we're going to understand the benefits of the form. What I'm going to do is this is a non-financial thing. This is an HR one, which will please some of the guys on the call today. So position request form. So the idea here is that actually I want to create a new position, and I could be a line manager within the business, and I want to create a new position. So I go onto Business World and I complete a simple form, and then that is submitted to Workflow, and it becomes approved, and then the position's created in the position register. So that's what we're going to do just now. This is our training system that we have been using, and within the sort of standard configuration in the modules there is a forms module. So we click on the forms module, and here's a number of forms that we have created. So these are really just to give ideas. So there's a contract variation form which I'll log on to live later, and we'll have a look at that. There's a vacancy form, there's a supplier form, and there's endless numbers of forms that we could possibly have. Here we're looking at this position request form, so I click on that, and what we're going to do is, I've obviously done this before, is we go into here. It's a new form, so we would give it a title, so a product trainer, okay, and it's a new position, okay, and the new position information is now open. So if I just go back there, you'll notice that there is no second tab here until we click that option there, and now there is a second tab, and now we can click on it. I can scroll down using the scroll bar on the right hand side here, and we can give it a name and press tab. We can click on here to find a position code, a job family. And so it's going to be one of these trainer posts. Can you notice that this form is now pulling data from Business World? So in here, I've completed the fact that there's 37 hours. In here, if I click space, it's going to say, give me the options that are available. I can say it's full time. I can click into here and say it's going to be non-teaching stuff, apparently. And then we can click on here, and I've got the sort of date functionality. And I want to scroll here to look into the next month, and it's going to start on the 11th of May. It's quite good having this assistant to help me do this. So that's filled in the 11th of May. Clearly there'll be a date 2, and it's going to go through. This is like an annual one, so sort of a you know, it's an annual contract perhaps. So in here it's going through to the 9th of May 2021. So that's okay. I could put some additional information. Now we've just brought these fields through for demonstration. Obviously the position register's got many more forms on it. We're just starting simply today, but we can add more fields in there. Just depends on what your requirements are. Okay, once we've done that, I can add additional notes as the thing says, and once I'm happy with that, the form is now complete, and I can click this complete form. Now that sends the form into workflow. It's just a regular workflow, and I can click OK. What this e-learning has done is actually now logged in as a different user, and we can click on this to open the task list. So open the task list in user way, and I've got a position form. If I click on that position form, then we can see here, and we can scroll down through the screen here. So it's a new form, and I can click on this field here, and I can then review all of the information that's been entered. So I would be some sort of HR admin type person, perhaps doing the preliminary review, and then there could be others looking at it depending on the workflow. If I'm happy with that, I can select approve. Clearly, because it's gone into workflow, we could set it up so you could change values in here, do some corrections, send it back to the originator and all that kind of stuff, but we're just keeping it simple for the moment. So if I click on approve, then that's approved that, and it's gone through. There's nothing further in there. So what will happen now is, now that position's been approved, if I go to payroll and go to my position register, okay, what we will be able to see if I go into here and start typing in product trainer, that now exists as a position with the details in that we entered. So here I've got my start date and all of that other good stuff, and you know, any of the fields that were in the form would flood through to here. So if we click on that, this is the same thing. So we're using a position request form, but this time it's an existing position. Okay, so we're using the same form, but it's an existing position. So my first one was creating a new position that's gone through workflow, and that's been approved, and it's created the position in the position register is great. This one is using the existing position. So remember, like before, there is no second screen here. If I click on the existing position tab becomes available. If I click on that, then we can use this to start retrieving the data. So in here, I've got my product trainer. I will need to tab for it to pull the data through. And what we do, if we scroll down here, it's got the situation where it's pulled down the data on the left-hand side, and then it's saying, what do we want to change on the right-hand side? So this position is currently 37 hours a week, and it's being changed for 22 hours a week and part-time. Perhaps there's been a reduction in the budget or some of such event. So that's what that is. So those are the changes. And once I'm happy with that, I can then click that, and that will send that through to workflow in the normal way. Okay, so that is dynamic forms, and that in its sort of how to use those forms. What I want to actually do is actually have a look at this in for real now, and if I just choose the right thing, I've got to come out of that, haven't I? So let me just scroll down that, go down that. Oh, where are we? And the slideshow, that's what's causing the problem. Going to Business World, great. So I'm logged in as a system user at the moment. Here is the forms as we've just seen. Those of you are going to say, yeah, but Ben, that was smoke and mirrors. That position didn't exist. What I'll do later on is actually we will create that position again, a different position, and I'll show you before and after, so we can see that it does actually work. Let's have a look at some of these other forms. So a supplier form is great. Got to refresh. Come on. Let's just refresh that. So with the supplier form, the idea here is that we are trying to complete maybe a requisition, and we've noticed that there isn't a supplier. And what we can do here is this would be used by somebody who's trying to raise a requisition out with the business, and it's just a different way of doing the approval piece instead of using the supplier master file approval, which can be a little bit cumbersome. And this is perhaps a better way to do it. So in here you would just type in your supplier name, and then you tick whether it was a new supplier or an existing supplier, and can you see the boxes come up exactly the same? If I click on the new supplier form, then again we've just got some very simple field setup, but there could be more fields in here. These are just to give you ideas of the sort of things that you could have. If I wanted to have an existing supplier, then if I click on that, this is pulling back all of the suppliers on the system. So if I go and have a look at this one, then what should have happened is, and it hasn't, is it should have pulled through all of the supplier information, the supplier group, and all that other good stuff, so that we can actually make some amendments. Sorry, I'm talking nonsense. This is an amendment. So if actually we wanted to change the supplier group, we could do. If we wanted to change the name, we could do. If we wanted to change the currency, we could do. And these are just examples of a different way of an amendment working. So rather than having this is what the existing data is and this is what the new data is, this is just showing, I'm selecting my supplier here, and then I'm going in here and I'm just changing the values. So that's a slightly different view. When that's saved, that goes through into the workflow in the same way. Now, I have to be honest, at the moment, there is some sort of bug in here, and we're trying to work with Unit 4 to get this resolved so that will create the new supplier within Business World, or it will make the necessary amendments. When that's done, I think this is going to be quite a nice form. Another form that we've got in here is a contract variation form, just to give you an idea. So this one could be used by a line manager to say, I've got this resource, but actually, we're going to change the contract, maybe change the hours or do something. So in here, I've forgotten the name of this person, so we'll just put change of hours. Okay, and the resource I'm going to use is this one, and he's a housing benefits officer, and they're on 37 hours, and actually for a period of time that's dropping down to 30 hours, and that's an example of the existing data and what it's being changed to. Again, that would go through a workflow, be approved by the relevant people, and then that record would be updated. So that's quite a neat form to be used as well. We've talked about contract variants, talked about supplier, the advance pay request form in here. This is a slightly different one. So the idea here is I'm going on a trip. Wouldn't that be nice? So we're going on a trip, I don't know, to Disneyland Paris, and that would be just great. It knows me, and it's clearly a business trip. Okay, and the idea here is that we could actually have this set up to say where I'm going, the date of the travel. It's got one of these things in, so I'm going to go next month, and you know, I'm going to have a hotel, and I need I don't know, £560 advance for that, and so on. So this again will go through workflow, be approved, and then I go to accounts payable, and I could get the money before I go. So that would be sort of like getting the money in advance of me travelling. Yet another use of the forms, which I think is really neat. Again, these forms can be changed and improved. We can add in more tabs. We're just trying to keep it as simple as possible to get you a good flavour of what these things can be used for. Okay, so have I got any questions? So
yeah, got two questions so far, Ben. So the first one was, we talked about a bug in the supplier creation form.
Yeah.
What is that bug?
It's a pity Martin isn't on the call. It's not quite, as I understand it, there's a handshake between the form and business world which isn't quite working. So it should be fixed fairly quickly. And we just haven't managed to get it fixed for this demonstration.
So that's an issue just for the supplier creation form?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
And the second question from Neil Charnwood is, the question from Neil from Charnwood is, can you add attachments from these screens into the document archive?
Wow. Okay. So if we go into here,
they're really testing us now, aren't they?
yeah. God, blimey. So I'm going to create a new position here. So if I come into there, I don't think, well, we haven't got any documents available. So what we'll do, Neil, is I'll ask Martin to test that, and we'll get back to you so that we know categorically whether that works or not.
In theory, that should work, but yeah, we'll get it tested and come back.
Yeah, we just haven't got any
on this system.
Library set up on this, so we'll actually get that tested and should make sure that works. So just to show there's no smoke and mirrors, if I go into payroll here, just to show you that this actually does work, and I'm taking my life in my hands here. So if I go into the position register in our little system here, there are quite a few. Click on that, search. So if we scroll down to the bottom here, so 59 is the last post in here. So what we'll do is we'll see if this actually does work. So I'm going to create a new position, living dangerously, There's a new position. I've opened this here, and the description is going to be a Zoom presenter, which certainly isn't me. And I can do what we did before. We can go and have a look in here at the sort of job families we've got. In here, we can say it's 37 hours a week. It's exactly as we did before. Is Martin left me? Okay. Right, so go. Non-teaching staff. Date from. So I'll just do it from there. Let's not mess around. No date 2, and we've got this Ben's live test. Okay, so if we're happy with that, submit the form. Oh, we didn't give it a name. New Zoom. This is the name of the form. Not the name of the position. So the form has a name, and the system and the position has a name. So that's gone through into workflow for approval.
Well, just on that, Ben, sorry, just to point back from Karen on that was, I think she's right, so we missed that. So we can only attach documents to a form once the form's been saved. So that's probably what we were missing from earlier.
It might be. Richard Towers has also sent me something. It could be that it needs to do that, but I want to just test it.
Yeah, that's fine. We can come back on that. Yeah.
So over here, I've got an advanced. This is just an advanced request workflow. For those of you who were actually on the course the other week when we were doing information browser, this is just an information browser, and I've got this position request form. So if I was to change this to be position request form and click view results, it's not gone into work. Where's my? I've made a mistake. Okay, so it's position request form. I knew I shouldn't have done this live. Let me just go into common, and we'll go into workflow inquiry. Just got to find out where this is. So my position form, I've got one in there. You just love it when the plan comes together. Why isn't that going to show me who it is? I knew I shouldn't have done this. Right, I can't prove that. So if you just take it, believe me, that will work. That's how it should work. And these are just examples of forms and how to use them. I think they're going to be really useful out in the business. And let me just have one more go. I don't think anybody else can log into here just to sort of see why this hasn't actually produced the result I was looking for. Well, is there any more questions while I'm just floundering around?
Questions. So one's technical question from Rakesh in India. Can we create a form like any master file, like project master file, and build to sync data with master file by any custom process? Rakesh, do you want to come off mute and just elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yeah, so can you hear me, Harpal?
Yeah, I can, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like I want to replicate the any master file setup. Like if we go in the project master file, we'll have at least 6 or 7 tabs, and which work in a sync with all other attributes. So let's say I have to create any master file or replicate the same form, but there is a problem with the master file workflow. which won't work as expected. So can we build the similar format form and attach any workflow to it?
That's not the idea of this. I don't think we're not trying to recreate the whole master file using forms. Ben, your thoughts on that?
Well, yes. Well, in theory you can.
Theory you can, but yeah.
In theory you can, because that's what we're doing with the position register, which is a master file, and so we do have projects set up in here. And if you wanted, it was projects you were talking about, wasn't it? So
there's projects, yeah.
I mean, if you wanted us to test that, that's something that we could look at doing. We haven't actually looked at creating a project using the forms, but I don't think there's any reason why it wouldn't work.
Because
then your question, if you're going to do that, then why not just give people access to the project master file? I don't know.
But that's the same as the as why, you know, for positions, why not give people access to positions?
True.
And so so the answer to that is you might have a distributed you know, users out in the community, and like the position register form is not a nice you know, thing to complete. And you don't, you know, and you've got a lot of Windows editing and all that kind of stuff. Whereas actually, if you use a form from a user's point of view, it might be a lot better, because if I'm coming into my menu here and I've got forms here for, you know, creating a supplier, you know, it might be a lot easier for people. It's just a thought.
So we can look in the project and see if it works. And the other question was from somebody called White P. Can you demo the web services service core function setup? So the answer to that question, probably not right now, but something we can take away.
Yeah, we can do that later. You know, because we're asking for ideas for further things. We don't really. The idea of these sessions are it's like short and sharp, and try to get as much information over as possible without boring people. But if there is an interest in that, then we can do a separate one to have a look at that.
So look out for the questionnaire when I send that out at the end of the session. So Steve, I think that's how Steve said, there is already a workflow approved for master files. So surely this is only meant for forms where there isn't already a master file approval. So that was kind of my point really. But Ben would sort of suggest some positions, for argument's sake, the forms, doing it through a forms cleaner than giving people the position master file. So there is an argument for and against, I suppose.
There is, yeah. I mean, some people don't like the position master, the master file approval routines, you know, and so this is just an alternative. So you know, that's just all there is really. Okay. So I'm not going to go and approve this because I found it's an HR administrator, and we can see that there is a normal behind here. It goes through here, and this is a sort of process it could go through. So it would be a normal workflow, and it's just a different way of doing things. Personally, I think when the master file approval was first launched, it was a little bit difficult to make it really sing, and I think the forms is a lot easier to set up out of the box. I can see it being valid for like setting up positions and maybe suppliers and that kind of stuff, but with projects, because you've got to also set up a work order, and you might have other things set up, it may be a step too far via a form, but we can have a look at it for sure. But I think it's more useful for those things, as somebody was saying. It's more useful for these sorts of things, maybe getting in advance. You know, if I've got a lot of people out in different offices here, there, and everywhere, getting in advance is quite useful. The contract variation form, if I've got a large disparate organisation with managers here, there, and everywhere, we don't really want to give them access to change contracts, perhaps, and this enables it to be formally recognised in the system, that request, if you like, for a contract variation, and then for it to go through an approval for HR, and sort of formalising that process. That sort of works, I think. And these are a vacancy, I guess, is a bit mute, because a lot of organisations would identify the new positions that brand new positions that they want, or identify vacancies maybe differently. So it depends on the organisation and what they're trying to achieve. Personally, I really like dynamic forms, and I think there's a lot of potential out there for their use. I like the way they can be all grouped in here, so it becomes quite an easy thing for users to recognise and to use. And when we come to look at Workspaces next week, it's quite this kind of thing fits quite well with Workspaces, and that kind of more modern looking, I think, interface that we're hoping to achieve. So have we got any more questions?
There's a conversation going on between Steve and Rakesh, so I'll leave them to it. Wes asked, can these easily be linked into resource flex fields, which they can be? So I've answered that. So there's nothing else. But just an idea. Sort of, are people using dynamic forms at the moment? I know it's kind of something that people have been getting quite excited about, especially in the HR space. Just a show of hands. Any thoughts on dynamic forms? I know Wes, you and I have had conversations about this in the past.
Yeah, we want to use it quite strongly. I think I've got about 4 or 5 in the pipework I want to start with. Yeah, it's pretty positive from my side of things.
Yeah, I know we've had previous attempts at this in previous versions of Business World where it wasn't quite as dynamic as we thought, but I think what Ben's demonstrated today is it's really come on from what it was like. So
yeah, I want to take advantage of the position one, but I want to take it from a completely different angle, and I need it to go through a lot more hoops. So I've probably got a few cases where I could test it to its limits.
I'm sure you have, Wes. Okay. So question from Steve: are you able to show how the form links to the master file, their dynamic bit?
No, that's the web services bit, I think, which is what we need to do separately. And I would probably get Richard, make sure Richard and Martin are on the call, because that's going to get technical. What we're trying to do here is, and the name of the game was to sort of say, it is dynamic now. We've got experience of it being truly dynamic, both in terms when you click on the form here, it's dynamic in the fact that it will actually dynamically change depending upon the options that you choose in here. But also, if you then choose an existing position, it's dynamic in the fact that it brings back that information, and then it's finally dynamic in that if you make those changes, they will update the master file in this case. So it's got sort of at least 3 levels of being dynamic. It's dynamic in terms of it changes dynamically depending upon what you're doing on the form. It pulls data back from the master file, and then it posts data to the master file. So I think it's really neat, and because you can basically configure this how you want, how it's relevant for your organization, then I think it's a very powerful tool.
So I just had just speaking to Richard. So his point, sort of, again, just taking this sort of one step further, if you like, from where we are. There's also another level. There's a UK product called FXfill that allows you to write custom SQL statements to populate values. So also sort of known as sort of auto populate. So once we've got the base layer in it, there's more we can do with this.
So, I mean, taking on Harple's, if you're wondering how to raise your hand in Teams, because I am actually interested in whether, because I think this is great, but in the I think it's in the participants.
Yeah, it's in the reactions at the bottom right-hand corner.
You've got an ability to raise your hand, and it would be good, I think, if we could just have a quick raise of hands to sort of see how whether people are going to use this or not.
Rich, I know you're dying to come in because you've asked him some questions. So I know you talked about this auto population tool. So do you want to explain a little bit more about it, Rich? So just for the audience.
Sure thing. So auto population forms, it is dynamic forms is the simplistic version of it. It is more, pick lists and screens and that kind of stuff. And you sort of set up using the standard screens entries, which I believe we're going to look at later on. With the auto population, you write reactions and custom SQL based on triggering fields, and you can get fields to populate off the back of that using custom fields. So it's a lot more powerful, but a lot more complicated. It is one of those sort of things you need to really understand the database to truly understand how to set it up. But the two can work in conjunction with one another. So dynamic forms can be used to, first of all, trigger what tabs and fields sections are visible and not visible, whereas the and also generate the actual population into the master file. Whereas the auto population actually generates what response comes off the triggering field. It would probably be good, potentially, we could have like a demonstration of the auto population as a possible future webinar.
Yeah. Okay. So you can build some logic into the it's building sort of if logic then, isn't it? In the simplest form.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's definitely a candidate for a future webinar, I would say.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
It is a beast in itself. It's a very sort of in-depth, a very big conversation piece.
Yeah, and you said LGSS are using it extensively, aren't they? So
yes.
Okay.
But a lot can be achieved with the noddy version, Richard, which is this one.
I would agree. If you can do the basic version, first of all, Dynamic Forms is a UK product that isn't widely used in a lot of sites, whereas this, which Ben is explaining, demonstrating, is core standard milestone 7 functionality. Therefore, I always go for, if we can get away with the core functionality, go with that.
Yeah.
And avoid using UK products unless you really have to.
Yeah, and just speaking to Wes Redcar, this will sort of Wes, if we can get this done for you guys can do it yourselves. This is a huge step change for you, isn't it?
Sorry, I was trying to mute myself there. I couldn't get the button working. Yeah, it's a big thing for us. Establishment control is a big thing within our authority. So, I say the position stuff, it would be quite heavy, and there's a lot of HR functionality would want to go down that route. I think as well, just with some of our new account setup and that sort of thing, I'd probably want to roll down this way rather than some of the manual forms we've got in place. So it's probably going to open up the doors. I mean, I've seen it before, and we are aware of some of this, and I think we've had sessions in it before, but it's good to see it again and maybe expand on it a bit more.
Yeah, so we had a session on this a few years ago, I think, with Wes, and the application wasn't quite there, but this is what Ben's demonstrated today. This is come on real leaps and bounds.
Yeah, I think for me, it's if it can pull through the data correctly and it can we can get going through the appropriate hoops, then that it's quite a strong possibility for us.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely does. We just got to, I'll do a sort of a separate live recording of creating a position and going all the way through the workflow, and we'll stick that on the website, along with everything else that we're putting up there, so you can see that, and you can see it actually working.
Yeah, I think it's just the order of things that we do different on our side of it. I think history's kind of taught us to do it a little bit different. I think with some of the problems that we've had in the past, so it almost wants to be, from our side of it, the variation for the person determines whether is there a change to the position and the structure, if you know what I mean, rather than the other way around.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the appointment, the termination, the variation, or a restructure, which will determine the creation or amendment of those posts, rather than the other way around.
Yes. So I mean, what we've got here is like the contract variation. So this is somebody actually in post, and we're changing their terms and conditions on that post while they're in it. This is a brand new post, but there is something which says this person in post informs a change in the position for the next person. So I get where
so that example there, that variation form, it might be that, okay, Wes Howes, we're changing his hours from 37 to 30. As a consequence of that, the position itself, we might be reducing the number of hours on the position register. So there's not 37 budgeted hours there anymore, there's only 30.
Yes.
Just so we can keep our vacancy management correct as well. So that's the sort of example I'm talking about. We need to have the same for new starters, the same for terminations.
Well, you could probably do that. You could, like you said, you'd probably be testing this, because you could probably do that within here. And I think you could put some logic in here. It says, if the hours changes, then open the position register. And
I think it'd be more like a tick box that we'd want in there to say, is, as a consequence of this, is the position register changing, if you know what I mean. And if that's yes, then expand that further and then make change the position register is what I'm glad to be looking at.
No, that's all good. All good. Great. Well, that's been a really good discussion. Is there any more questions, Harper? I can't see the...
No, there's no more questions. But again, feel free, please, to sort of, raise your hands or take yourself off mute. I think this has kind of been an interactive session. I've enjoyed it. So is there any more questions before we close out?
Does everybody...
It's your time, so... So someone's about to ask something, I think.
Hi, Apple. Can you hear me?
Yes, yeah. Hi.
Yeah, really good session. Thank you very much. We've just started using forms quite well. I'm trying to introduce it into our organisation. I'd definitely be interested in a further session on the web services and trying to get the whatever it's call function.
Okay, so that's 2 hands up to web services. So I think we can probably do something. We can take this further and do some work on web service. So, Richard, we're going to need you to work with Martin on this. So we've got a bit of demand there. So yeah, we can certainly set something up for that. That's not a problem at all.
Brilliant.
We're looking for inspiration for sort of further sessions anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably pick up a session about web services, how to use it, and then expand into web APIs, which is the alternative to web services. So we could probably cover both topics across 2 sessions.
Yeah. I mean, the whole idea with these is to try to keep them short and sweet. So if people want to know more, then we can have more sessions. But or they can go on as long as people ask questions for. But we try to do the presentations as quickly as possible, get over the core messages, have a discussion. And if people want to know more, then that's great. We can schedule more sessions, but it's just an opportunity to sort of share ideas and see things working. So with that, I'm going to thank everybody for turning up. And next week it's Workspaces and similar sort of format. And thank you very much, everybody.
And before you go, guys, I've just put the questionnaire on the chat. Please take a look at that. And again, if more from a view, if you want to tell us how wonderful we are, we'll accept that. But more importantly, for future sessions, if you want to tell us what you want to see next, because as Ben said, we've got a session next week and the week after that, then this series is at a close. But we do want to continue this going forward as well. So we just need some inspiration from you all. Tell us what you want to see.
Can I book in a call with you tomorrow, Harple? Is that okay?
Yeah, I'm around, Wes. No problem at all.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. Bye.